Okay. Looks like we have a good group of folks on here today. This is great. So welcome to Nebraska Big Butterfly Counts online training. I am Jamie Bachman. I'm the Nebraska Master Naturalist Program Coordinator, and I will be one of three people that will be facilitating and presenting this evening. We also have, would you introduce yourself, Holly and Joe?
I'm Joanne, and Holly's sitting next to me, and we're going to be doing the species.
So I'm really glad that you're all here. I'm gonna share my screen and I'm gonna kind of walk you through the agenda for tonight and then our second night where we will be going through the survey methodology and all of the data pieces that will be on Thursday. So I'm gonna share my screen here. Okay. So is everyone seeing an agenda looking type situation? Thank you. So tonight, Tuesday, we will be covering, you're gonna meet the team. This is, so there's we have I don't know if our entire team is gonna be on tonight, but we'll introduce you to the team that has been working on this. Last season was our pilot season. So this is our first like official season. And so we'll introduce you to the team. We'll do a little bit of give you the background of the project and where it all came from and how this all came to be. We'll do an introduction to butterflies. That's going to be the foundational background knowledge, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. And then we'll go through the butterfly ID piece of the. We're doing Eastern and Central butterflies, Joe and Holly.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let me just make sure that we don't have anybody that's waiting. And let me open up the chat real quick in case there's any questions. Okay, we are going to go ahead and get started. Does that sound good, everybody? Right, real quick, why don't we just everybody stay muted. And if you have questions, a couple of housekeeping things. That's what I should have said. That's what I meant to say. We'll stay muted unless and you can just pop your questions in the chat. If for some reason we miss a question, feel free to stop us, unmute and unstop us. This is a pretty formal gathering of us butterfly nerds. The more people that have their video on is more fun for us. So I appreciate seeing so many faces and videos on. So thank you for doing that, folks. Okay. Ooh, pretty. Okay, Joe, do you want to introduce the team or do you want me to introduce the team?
Go ahead.
Okay. I already introduced myself as the program coordinator. We also have Joe Langaby on as well. She's the her and Holly are like the original survey creators. Stephanie Paris also, who is our new pollinator ecologist at the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission. She is also a part of this team and has been very an important aspect of taking a look at the survey that we had, the methodology that we had in the pilot year, and helping us make adjustments to make it flow easier. And assure, she's just been really, really great. It's been great. I think she's on here. It's been really great working with Stephanie. She's also running the Regal and Fritillary butterfly surveys as well, that community science project. And then Bree Nugent, she is our new community science program manager. We're real lucky to have Bree on. She's also a Nebraska Master Naturalist, and going through that training is kind of what propelled her into the career that she has today now as the community science program manager. So really great one. I just loved working with this crew of people, and I'm super grateful for sure.
All right. The project background. Well, first of all, both Holly and I are retired teachers. And when we retired, we said we were going to volunteer somewhere. And it ended up that I did a lot of volunteering at Lawrenson. And I first started with doing what's in season for plants, and it got to what's in seasons for migrating birds. And then I talked to the conservation director and said we should do butterflies. So we had a 1 hour training showing us pictures of butterflies, and that was about it. So I was a novice, and Holly was a novice, and we decided we should do this. We started out just going and learning the butterflies, and then from then we said, well, we should do it at each garden. How many butterflies and what butterflies? And then we've progressed to make it more scientific. That started in 2015. Then in 2018, we went to Fontenelle Forest and started surveying butterflies. Then in 2022, met up with some game and parks people. They went out surveying with us. We got to talking, and then I met Jamie at the Legacy Conference, and she had just started being our fearless leader. And we got to talking, and we said, we really should do this as a project for Nebraska. So we got all together and worked on it, trying to get it to go for last spring. And now we're at the first full year without a pilot program of doing the project. We are covering central and eastern Nebraska because our butterflies are very similar. There's some butterflies that are in central that we don't have in eastern, and eastern some that the central doesn't have, but they're pretty close to the same. So this is, and West Nebraska, the Panhandle is completely different. So we're emphasizing the central and eastern. Okay. So why Nebraska's big butterfly count? Well, first of all, butterflies are pollinators, and we know that pollinators are important for so many of our food sources. Butterflies are also a food source for animals, particularly the caterpillars. The birds have to eat thousands of them to feed for their little babies. Butterflies are an indicator species. They're sensitive to the changes in the environment. Their lifespan's only about 3 to 4 weeks, and so they can respond to what's happening in the environment much faster than, say, the coyote or whatever muskrat, whatever animal might be. They respond much faster, and so we can see how they're being affected, particularly climate change in this day and age. And they're easily recognized. They're much easier to recognize than bees or ants or flies. They're bigger, they're brighter, most of them, and doesn't take too much to learn each of the species. Okay. Another reason for doing this is we have a lot of at-risk butterflies in Nebraska. There are, and we'll see a slide on this, 213 butterflies in Nebraska, and about over 50% of them are at risk. And here's just a few of them. These are ones that, except for the gray comma, I see fairly often. But some of them, maybe you see once a year. So it becomes very important. Well, what's happening to this? Why are they declining? Okay. This is a map of the state showing the percent of at-risk butterflies. In the West, you can see there's 48% of the butterflies are at risk. Over here in The eastern part, the south part is 28%, the north part's 27, then we go to the central, it's 29 and 21. The butterflies we're doing are the north central, south central, northeastern, and southeastern. We're not doing the panhandle part. Okay. So some of the reason for this is just example. The graph is of the monarch, and we keep hearing a lot about the monarch and how the populations are declining. And until you go out all the time, we have no idea what's happening in this part of the country. And so this is a graph from Lawrenson is in blue and Fontenelle Forest is the orange color, and how the numbers have varied from 2018 to 2022. 19 was a really moist year. We were pretty good, and the flowers were probably still pretty, had enough moisture so that they bloomed good, and you can see how big 2000 was. So, but it gives an idea. And then another one is the regal fritillary is at risk. We've only seen one at Fontenelle Forest and one at Lawrenson. We don't have the habitat at either place for that. They want the open prairie, and neither Fontenelle or Lawrenson has that habitat. Okay. Anybody have a question so far? All right.
Okay. So now we're gonna just get into this introduction to butterflies, which is, you know, our baseline foundational information about butterflies. So 17,000 species worldwide, 750 in the US, and here in Nebraska we have 213 species of butterflies. And in all the states, we are ranked 10th. Nebraska is ranked 10th in the number of species in our state. But 57% of the butterflies in Nebraska are considered at risk. Let's see here. So we have some migratory and non-migratory butterfly species here in Nebraska. So the poster child for migratory species is monarchs. Of course, I said that like lame-o monarchs. That's not true. It was not meant in the tone of my voice. So you know, the monarchs go do their annual flight north with 4 or 5 generations, and then they come back south to the same oil fir forest in central Mexico. And there are also a lot of other butterflies that migrate as well. Painted ladies migrate, and common buckeyes are also ones that migrate. And we have several non-migratory species as well. Eastern comma, cabbage white, orange sulfur, gray hair streaks. And then we have several that overwinter as in their pupa phase. Joe, I was just got hung up for a second. Like, is it always in their pupa phase that butterflies overwinter?
No, they can overwinter. We got like 3 that overwinter as adults. They can overwinter as pupa, eggs, or the chrysalis. It just depends on the species as to which form they overwinter in.
Lovely. So again, we have those migratory, non-migratory, and then we have the overwintering species as well. And again, life cycle, right? Foundational knowledge. We might have some beginners here, like I want to get to know my butterfly. So complete life cycle. Egg, larva, pupa, and adult. Butterflies, several have host plants, right? So they will lay their eggs on specific plants, and we'll talk more about how they know how to do that. I have to let somebody in here 1 second. On host plants. So that host plant is what their caterpillar will eat. The caterpillar of that species will eat. And most of the adults typically drink nectar, but there are, and you'll find out there's lots of exceptions here to many of the butterfly rules. The exceptions are that there are some that will feed on rotting fruit and dung and tree sap. Ooh, I like all these butterfly behaviors. So if you're not familiar, if you have seen this and you don't know what this behavior is, oftentimes you'll see butterflies gathered up in a group on the ground, and that is called puddling. Typically you'll see them in wet soil, muddy wet soil, but you can also see them on rotting plants or rotting animals. What they're doing that for is they are, it's mainly the males that are doing it, and I'll tell you why here in just a minute. And it's to extract the nutrients and minerals they need, from mainly salt and nitrogen, actually, from the soil. And then the males will pass these nutrients on to the females during reproduction. So during reproduction, during mating, they give the female a sperm packet. And so not only does it have sperm, but it also has amino acids, salts, and proteins. And I was reading up on this, and I found this really nerdy study about cabbage whites. And cabbage whites, so I have to tell you about my nerd discovery. So nitrogen plays a pretty significant role in the reproduction of butterflies. It's a really important energy source, and it's also used in wing pigmentation. So in a study, so some other nerds wanted to do a study, and so in ag land, the cabbage white females that were in non-ag land typically mated with more than one male, and the females in ag land tended to mate with only one male. So they were receiving what the big nerds call a nuptial gift, right? So that sperm packet, they only needed one of those because it had enough nitrogen in it, because the males were pulling enough nitrogen from the soil in ag land that the females did not need to mate more than once to get as much nitrogen as they needed. How cool is that? That's cool nerd stuff there. And it's called a nuptial gift, just so you know. Okay, and sunning. So butterflies are ectothermic. A lot of us grew up with the term cold-blooded. Ectothermic means, body regulation, it's the regulation of temperature as it relies on the outside environment. And so butterflies have the ability to some butterflies have the ability to maintain body temperature over a wide range of temps, and it varies based on families. So some species or families are more vulnerable to climate change because they don't have that ability to regulate their body temperature as other families do. So some are more vulnerable. And then we have, and a way that that butterflies do this is you'll see them and they'll just be basking with their faces into the sun. And it's called sunning, or there's another word for it. I can't think of it right now. But some butterflies will sun with their wings open and their faces for the full sun effect. It's called basking. That's what it is. So the basking will raise the muscle temperature of butterflies, and that helps their reach the temperature needed for flight much quicker. And then also those butterflies that have darker colors obviously absorb sun energy and sun heat a lot quicker as well. So that is one of the behaviors, and those are why they would typically will be sunning. Um, most butterflies visit flowers, and they are doing this for the nectar. Um, uh, Nectar is mostly 80% sugar. That's where those carbohydrates are, but it can vary in concentration depending on the species and the environmental conditions. Um, and the um, the mouth parts of the butterfly have adapted, into this long straw-like proboscis, and um, so they can get down deep down into where some of these harder and these tubular plants where the nectaries are deeper into the flower. They can get the nectar out of there a lot better than other species like bees. Sometimes some bees will eat holes at the bottom of the flowers to get at the nectar in that way if they can't get in through the top. um some species, though, here's another one. Here's an exception. Some species do feed on decaying animals and rotting fruit and tree sap and even scat. um, Something that I found that was really interesting is that at the tip of the proboscis, there's like a dorsal and a ventral side, and they are it's sponge-like, and this allows for butterflies to access more variety of resources when they're eating for their food source. They are able to not just get the nectar, they are able to um, use rotting food and plants and even dung. So cool. Okay, so most pollinators have preferences for the types of flowers they want based on shape or color or size. And then where the nectar is within that flower, within the structure of the flower. Butterflies are drawn to bright colored flowers, right? Pink, purple, orange, yellow, red. Um, uh, some studies have shown that butterflies also can sense the nectar amino acid content of different flowers and prefer those flowers uh, with high amino acid content versus low amino acid content. So um, they can sense that. And we'll talk about how they can sense things here in just a minute. There also may be, oh, this is another cabbage white nerd thing that I found out. I don't know why I was always cabbage whites. Maybe they're just a really easily controllable group. But when given the choice, cabbage whites preferred feeding on artificial flowers containing sugar amino acid mixes versus sugar only mixes. So that amino acid piece is a really important piece of their when they're selecting flowers. Um, and then color preferences can sometimes be based on specific butterfly families. Like hawk moths prefer a specific or different butterfly. I said hawk moths, but different butterflies can prefer within that whole family specific colors of flowers. And also some studies have shown that butterflies will avoid flowers that have predator cues. Like the study put artificial spiders on flowers, and butterflies would avoid those flowers. And so, but butterflies will not go to flowers; they'll avoid those flowers when there's predator cues on there, which is pretty. Um, okay, so here are some really interesting things about the sensory adaptations that butterflies have. So butterflies have between 5 and 15 photoreceptors. And it wasn't until very recently that the 15th one was discovered. Typically it went up to 9 photoreceptors. And so what that means is that photoreceptors are indispensable for seeing color. And so um they butterflies can also see ultraviolet light as well. And so a lot of flowers are have evolved to display ultraviolet patterns, and what they will look like is like a bullseye and a landing platform straight to the nectaries, and the butterflies can see that. So neat. um So that was photoreceptors and chemoreceptors. So this is chemoreceptors are where butterflies get like a lot of their information about the world around them, and they're scattered across the body. And what they are is they're nerve cells that are open onto the surface of the exoskeleton, and they react to the presence of different chemicals in the environment. Um, let's see, did I miss anything in here? Um, so most, as far as smelling goes, most smell comes from butterfly antennae, and they are smelling for that nectar, right? And then also pheromones. And there is some debatable back and forth on how much that pheromone release has to do with mating preference, like finding mates, but it's leaning into that the pheromone release from males is and the pickup from the antennae chemoreceptors is one of the ways that they find mates. Females also have chemoreceptors on their legs, and this helps them, find appropriate host plants. So the chemoreceptors on the legs are like spines on the back of the legs, and then the females will drum their legs on against a plant, and that will release the juices, and then they're able to tell if it's an appropriate plant for their egg. Let's see. Butterfly flight. So butterfly wings and butterfly flight are pretty cool. So there's a link here. When I'll be sending out in the follow-up email, I'll be sending out this presentation, and you'll be able to click this hyperlink here and watch this short little video about butterfly flight. But essentially what happens is it's the way that butterflies are propelled forward is their wings clap together, and that air kind of gets pushed out, and that's what propels them forward in their wing clap. It's pretty it's pretty. I want to see videos of them because they've recorded it of the slow-mo butterflies, and how their wings move is really interesting. You should watch it. It's like this figure eight shape. And butterflies can typically be pretty erratic in their flight pattern to avoid predators. Um, uh, so there, I'm gonna skip that part. I had some extra nerd details, but I think I'm just gonna skip them because it was pretty deep in there. Let's see what else we got. So these are and some more stuff about that is the different, the exceptions to the rules. I love this, right? So the difference between butterflies and moths when you're trying to identify, right? So butterflies can be brightly colored, but they can also be camouflage browns and tans. Moths are mostly camouflaged in neutral colors, but there are also some that are brightly colored. Butterflies are mostly diurnal, and moths are mostly nocturnal, but also some moths can be diurnal. Butterflies have that long filament with the club on the tip, and then but moths have that feathery antenna. That's pretty key. Butterflies typically, when they're at rest, their wings are upright, and moths, their wings are flat, but there's some exceptions. Butterflies typically have a smooth body, where moths are thick and fuzzy, and butterfly forewings and hindwings are connected, and moths are not. Butterflies have this often smooth, but can be erratic, especially when they're escaping a predator. And typically moths are pretty erratic in their flight. So let's test ourselves here on your butterfly or moth skills. Are you ready? So go ahead and unmute yourself or pop it in the chat. Is this a butterfly or a moth?
Butterfly.
Got several butterflies, a couple moths.
The butterfly.
Butterfly.
The biggest butterfly nerd here does declare this is a butterfly. Do we know what kind of butterfly it is, Joe?
It looks like a northern pearly-eye or common wood. No, not common wood. Little wood satire.
Satire. Butterfly or moth?
Mhm.
Moth.
Moth.
Yep, moth. You're right.
Well done, everybody. So wings are out, right? Butterfly or moth?
Moth.
We got several butterflies. I think we
Oh,
got a
yeah.
couple
That one-
moths in there.
Okay, that one is a moth. You
It's
might
really, go ahead, Joe.
try because of the color and such. You can kind of see the antennas are feathery. You don't see a knob at the end. But that's a good
And-
one. And
It's a big bodied fuzzy guy, right?
yeah.
Megan says it's a dressed up bee. It's going out to a Halloween bash. Butterfly or moth? We got some moths. We got a couple butterflies. There isn't a strong consensus. Oh, we got someone who named it.
It is a skipper.
Yeah,
The
man.
butterfly. Skipper butterfly. Okay. Some people say that they were in their own group, but that's a skipper, and we're going to be talking about that in a little bit.
Okay, that sounds great.
You can see the knobbed ends as opposed to the moth. That was a good one.
Butterfly or moth? So, typically moths are neutral colors, but when they rest, their wings are out, right?
Yeah,
So
well, so far everybody has moth on it. Yeah, and it's also triangular. A lot of them are triangular.
mhm.
Good one, but it's bright colored. Not one around here, I don't think.
Nope, I don't know. This is a moth, correct?
Right.
Abby has identified this moth as a cutie.
All right, I like that.
Butterfly or moth? Butterfly, 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 butterfly.
You're doing pretty good on that.
The consensus is butterfly, I think.
And that is a butterfly.
Well done, everyone. Does anybody have any questions about our introduction to butterflies? Before you begin, Joe and Holly are going to jump into our species ID, our butterfly ID. But before we do that, I just want to, I skipped real quick. I just want to talk about what we're going to be discussing on Thursday because I forgot to do that at the beginning and I don't want to forget at the end. So we'll talk about the importance on Thursday. We're going to talk about the importance of survey frequency, ideal survey conditions, the survey methods, unknown butterflies, iNaturalist. We're going to just talk about what how to use iNaturalist for the unknown butterflies. We'll go over the data entry and we'll have evaluations at the end.
Okay.
Let me check the chat real quick to see if there's any questions. Oh, Bree says that she thinks that pink moth was found in Lincoln.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It doesn't look like there's any questions, Joe. Take it away.
All right. There. There. Okay, butterfly ID. This is the part that a lot of people think, oh, you got to be experts on butterflies to go out and do the survey. And you don't. Both Holly and I are self-taught, and we still ask other people to help us with identification. We don't expect you to be perfect. You know, we're going to make mistakes. I still make mistakes, and sometimes I'll look at a picture and say, oh, how could I misname it? You know, so you're continually learning, and I don't want you to be intimidated by the fact you don't think you know them well enough. You'll go through it, we'll introduce you to the species, and it won't take you long until you learn them. First of all, got to look at the anatomy. We have the head, and then the thorax, and the abdomen, then the hind wing and the forewings. Those are the parts to the main parts that you look at. We're going to talk every so often about eye spots, which are right there. Then we got fringes along the edge of the wing, and the margins, there'll be little lines sometime, the body, the hind wing. And sometimes we talk about characteristics in the hind wings, and other times we'll look at characteristics in the forewings. And then it becomes important, the dorsal and the ventral side, because they can be different. And hopefully we got all the mistakes corrected on this group from what we had before. Size-wise, you're going to be getting also each individual species with characteristics on it and size. But to give you a reference as to the sizes, we call small about 0.5 inches to 1.5. So we're looking at a dime to the size of a domino. Medium is 1.5 inches to 3.5 inches, a domino to a card. And then large is 3.5 to 5 inches. And so you got one card and then you got them back to back. So this is kind of a reference to give you an idea of the size that we're looking at. They overlap. I mean, you can't just say, oh, it's going to stop at this. Sometimes if the larvae have really eaten a lot, they're going to be bigger than what the normal size is. So it's something that it's just a reference as to what we're referring to. This is example of what's going to be in your field guide, and I'll show you another page here in a minute that we're not going to go over tonight, but we wanted to introduce you to it. And they're all laid out the same way. They have the size small, medium, large. Then we have the habitat where you would likely find them: wetlands, forests, grasses, prairies, whatever it might be. A little bit about the flight. Are they erratic? Do they glide? Do they flutter? Are they low flyers, high flyers? Sexual dimorphism is, are the male and female the same? Are they different? There are some species that the male and female are different. Then there's a lot that are the same. And you might think, oh, when they're different, oh, that's a whole new species. And then you find out, no, that's just a female. Then characteristics, what separates it from others that might look similar. And then some similar species and the flight times. When do they fly? Some only fly maybe in the spring, some only fly in the fall. And so that becomes important. So here's an example of cabbage white. We're using cabbage white a lot, but that's because it's so common. Where every single species that we talk about tonight, you're going to have a page just like this. This is the only one you're going to see today. But you'll see that, and it gives the size, habitat, disturbed areas, yards, just about everywhere. It's slow, fluttering flight. The female has 2 black spots and the male 1, so you can see it over here. This is the female and this is the male. They have a black tip at the end of the wing, and the checkered white is kind of similar. And they go from spring to frost. They're out right now. So, butterflies of central and eastern Nebraska. In Nebraska, we have 5 basic species that you're going to see in this area. There are other species that we don't have here in Nebraska. Whites and sulfurs are pretty common, and that we'll go over. Then we have skippers. Skippers are the little brown butterflies. Not that they're all necessarily brown, but that's how they're usually described. Brushfoots, there's all sorts of subdivisions that we'll be going over. Gossamer wings, there are a number of different groups in that, and then the swallowtails. Probably the brushfoots, swallowtails, and whites and sulfurs are the ones that people are most familiar with. Skippers often get overlooked because they're fast and they're brown and they blend in. Okay. Any questions? Okay, whites and sulfurs.
Hold on 1 second, Joe. I couldn't find my unmute button. So I just I just have a couple questions and I answered them, but I want to fact check myself.
Sure.
So, when we're talking about the size, you're talking about like the wingspan of the butterflies, correct?
Yes,
So small is like with the wing size, not the just the body, correct?
it is the wing size.
And then, like, so butterfly wings can detect light, but do the eye spots detect light, or are they only called this because they look like eyes? And I answered, yeah, go ahead.
It's because they look like eyes.
Yeah, so it's an adaptation to avoid predation, right? It's just that
Correct.
evolution, right? Okay. I just wanted to fact check myself.
Oh, that is correct.
Thank
Anytime.
you. Thank you, nerd.
All right, everybody ready? All right, whites and sulfurs.
They can be small to medium, white to shades of yellow, and they may vary with season. Their food source is nectar, and while they feeding, they hold their wings together. The males puddle, and we talked about puddling earlier. And they're common butterflies of open and disturbed areas. We have 3 different ones that you're likely to see. The most likely is the cabbage white, the male and female. Checkered white, we don't see that often. It might be more common in some of the central places in Nebraska. And then the Olympia marble, I've never seen that.
Yeah,
Joanne says that
It's more in the central part of the
the
state.
central, that they'll see that.
Okay, now, what you're going to also get is a species comparison. And what we've done with every group of species, we've put those that are similar together on the same page, circled similarities so that you can see them. And then if you're out in the field, you can take them with you. And if you see a white butterfly, you can look at it really quick and say, oh, that's a cabbage white. You don't need to know if it's male, female, but that's how everyone is done. So go ahead, Holly.
So if you look at the whites, if you take it from a big overall look, first look and see, okay, if you know the general characteristics of each family, then you can tell, okay, this is in the whites and sulfurs family. And to go to that area of your book or guide, and then just look at the circles, and you can easily see we've got an all-white butterfly with either one or two dots. And then this slide is slightly faded, but when the butterflies are older, they have lost a lot of their scales. And so the colors will be a lot blurry or just duller. But there is a black tip on the forewing. The checkered white, if you look at that, it has more dots, and they're kind of square, and they even have marks on the margins or borders of their wing, and those are all kind of a charcoal color. And then the Olympian marble on the hind wings, they have on the ventral side, they have these really pretty yellow-green marbling.
Okay, the sulfurs. There's 5 sulfurs that you will likely encounter. Clouded sulfur and orange sulfur. Then the cloudless sulfur, so the names are easy enough to confuse alone, clouded and cloudless. And then you get little yellow and dainty sulfur. So we'll compare them, the large and then the small. So the 3 large ones are clouded sulfurs and orange sulfurs. And if you mistake them for each other, don't worry about it. They're really, really hard to tell apart. The orange sulfur has this orange area right there. The clouded sulfur does not. The other thing that can set them apart, if they will sit still for you long enough, the orange sulfur has these black dots here, right up there, and the clouded does not have it. They both are erratic flights, so they're really, really hard to tell apart. And it's one of those, yes, if you can see them close enough, you may be able to identify. Clouded usually comes out earlier in the spring than the orange sulfur, and the orange sulfur stays later in the summer for the most part. Then we get the cloudless sulfur, which is a stray from down south. It's quite a bit larger than the other 2, and it's almost a lime yellow. It's really pretty. It's a high flyer where the other 2 fly low, but it's much higher. It really, really likes red and blue flowers. That's about all you're going to see them on. But it's a gorgeous one. Then the other thing that becomes confusing with the orange sulfurs, they have a female form that is almost white, like the cabbage white. The difference, if you can see them, they're kind of a greenish cast to them. But otherwise, okay, look for the tip on the cabbage white and that dot. You might have cabbage whites that don't have the dot. And look for, you can see the black edge of so you can look here, you can see the black edge. That's another thing to look for, but that makes it even more confusing. So hopefully that sits still long enough for you that you can see the difference. The other 2 sulfurs are little yellow and dainty sulfur. Little yellow is a little bit bigger than the dainty sulfur. It has this brown edge along the hind wing, and do scaling. You got some brownish markings on the underside. It's always slow flight to the ground. It's a stray. The dainty sulfur is also a stray, and it looks like it's been rolling in the dust. And when it's flying, it doesn't like to stay put very long. It almost will look kind of white when it's flying. You can see these black scales along it. And it's slow, erratic. It wants to fly in front of you, and it will keep leading you. And you think, oh, good, I'll get a picture of it. Nope, and it keeps flying in front of you. So those are the 5 sulfurs. Okay, the next group are the gossamer wings, and in the gossamer wings, there's the harvesters, coppers, blues, and hair streaks. I do not have a picture of the harvester. You will be lucky to see it, and the whole time that we have been surveying, we've seen one at Fontenelle and one at Lawrenceson. So I don't have it in as a slide because it's not very common. The coppers are found more in open areas and kind of prairie areas. They're considered small. They usually have some metallic reddish orange or purple. You can see that here and inside. They're quick, low flights. They do like nectar, and they'll perch low to the ground. I was out one time. I saw one, and this was when I first was learning butterflies. I saw one of them. I don't remember which one. And about 10 feet away, the second one landed, and I knew they were different. I didn't know their names. I knew they were coppers, and that was about it. But you could tell right away that they looked different. And so when we compare them, you can see the bronze copper, how bright orange it is inside. And you'll notice that when it flies. You get this orangish color band. When the wings are closed, you can see that orange forward wing. And then you got the band at the end of the hind wing that is orange. Whereas on the gray, it's gray inside. Definitely different. If you can see them open, you'll definitely see them different than when they're closed. When they're closed, you don't have that orange forewing, but you do have this nice wavy band of orange.
Hey, Joe, when you're talking back and forth between like these two comparisons, like if the one is more common than the other, would you note that?
I will. Now, these two, we did see the gray copper last year at Fontenelle. That's the only time I've seen it at Fontenelle. Never seen them at Fontenelle. At Lawrenceson, they're in open areas, but I will try to mention which ones are more common. Yes.
And it does depend on where you are at. If you're in a wooded area versus a prairie, like, right, there's different factors that'll play a role in that, right? Of course.
And that's one of the nice things when they get the other part of each species, it tells where they're likely to be found. You know, and we're not going over it. We're just trying to help them identify them tonight. Okay. Hair streaks. Hair streaks are small butterflies. They have a definite shape that once you learn the shape, you know when you see them, it's a hair streak. You may not know which one, but you can tell it's a hair streak just by the shape of it. They almost all of them have some intricate patterns along them. They're quick, erratic flights. They like nectar really well. And when they feed, their wings will go back and forth. And this is to help ward off predators because they'll think that's the head. And so as we compare them, we'll kind of show that. Coral hair streak is only going to be found basically in the prairies. I have not seen them at Fontenelle or Lawrenceson, but I have at 9 Mile Prairie in Lincoln. It is one of the few that does not have a tail. You'll see that the gray hair streak has a tail, the banded has a tail. But what really sets it apart, it's brownish and it has this nice orange band. I mean, it looks so different from the gray hair streak. Gray hair streak's gray. It has this eye spot with the orange and it has these lines that separate it out. What's cool with them, when it's feeding, these tails move back and forth. And birds think that that's its head because you look, okay, here's antennas by the eyes. Here's the eyes, here are the eyes. Ooh, this part's easier to get. I'll make a snatch for it. Well, birds may get it, and you'll see butterflies with parts of their wings missing, and they can still fly. So this hair streak, even though a bird nipped it, it can still go fly off and do what it has to do. The gray hairs of, okay, then we get the banded hair streak. The gray hair streak is much more common than the banded hair streak. And I see the banded hair streak more at Fontanelle Forest than I do Lawrence. And so it kind of likes the forest part. It has these nice rows of bands, has a tail and the orange part, but here you can see the colors really are different. And these two, you really aren't going to mix up for each other. I mean, all three of these are pretty distinct in this area. You get to some other hair streaks around and yeah, they might be a little bit more common, but these are the three common ones that you're going to see.
The blues, their size is small, and they have on their dorsal side bright blue wings. Now they're different shades of blue, and the females inside are more of a brown blue or a gray blue, whereas the males are brightly colored blue. Yeah, that their flight is moderately quick and erratic, and it's really hard to figure out to get them to sit still long enough so you can focus on the ventral side as they keep their wings closed. But if you're patient, you can figure it out most of the time. Food source is nectar. Notable behaviors, the males like to puddle.
Okay, now the azures are out right now. I saw about 16 today when I was in the forest. So they are the first one of these four to appear. Go ahead.
And their inside, dorsal side, is a light blue. And a lot of times when you're looking at them flying, the outside is kind of a pale gray. So they'll look like little white butterflies until they open their wings. But even so, it's a light blue inside. They fly down into closer to the low vegetation to get the nectar. But then if you frighten them, they'll fly right up to the lower part of the trees. Now, after the azure, well, actually, the eastern tail blue shows up pretty quick.
Yeah.
It really, you might see the eastern tail blue before you see an azure, but it usually the azures are here first. The eastern tail blue, if you look at the circles, you see that the dots, oh, you know what? Yeah, I'm doing my finger, nobody can see it. The dots are different, and eastern tail blue has a tail. So that's going to be your first.
And the orange.
And the orange eye spots. That'll be your first clue. Once again, if they open their wings for you, you'll see a darker but bright blue with a wider band around the wing border. And it should have kind of a brown look to it. They're not quite as flighty. They're a little bit slower.
They're lower flying.
And they're lower flying, and they like to puddle. And sometimes each week you go to wherever you're going, if you see them, they'll be in that same spot next week puddling if there's water there. Recurse blue is not as common, at least not at Lawrenson. And we find the host plant at Lawrenson. And a dead giveaway is your row of black spots, eye spots, with a ring of white and also the white fringe and the wavy lines just inside the border of the fringe. And that if you get them if you get close enough and they happen to open their wings, you might be able to see that dark spot, but I don't think I ever have.
I took a picture once thinking that it was an eastern tail blue. And I was told by the next person, no, that black spot tells you it's Riegert's blue. So you learn and you see, but I happened to get a picture with it.
And they like to fly in and out of the grass. So in low, so when you look for them, you might just see them for a second and then they dive back into the grass. The Melissa Blue is not at Lawrence.
We've only seen one, and that was at Fontenelle Forest. They like more open areas or a little bit further north, maybe. But they're characterized by this orange row of spots. And the female has this nice orange when it's inside. Male does not. But they're not real common here. Okay. Any questions before we go for about a 5-minute break so everybody can go to the restroom, get a drink, whatever you need, stand up and stretch for a little bit?
I have one.
Thank you.
I'm wondering, do you ever net them to help you identify them?
Do I? No, I have never netted butterflies. I take pictures of them.
It-
I should say when, I'll take that back. When I've done the 4th of July count and have been with some other people, they have netted them. Myself, though, I never net them.
Is it okay to do that?
Yeah, as long as you release them.
Will that affect our protocol, or is that not a part of our protocol? Is it just by sight? Like, that's something we should ask Stephanie. I think Stephanie's on here. Maybe she can speak to that. Stephanie or Bree.
This is Joanne. I don't think that, I mean, if they can net them, if they're experienced netting them, I don't think there's any problem with them and then just releasing them. What I know some people will do is they'll net them, they'll put them in like a clear tennis container, ball container, look at it and then try to figure out what it is.
Or take a picture? And sometimes I've done that. Take a picture of it in the container.
Right, right.
But we just need to make sure that it's not outside of the protocol before
Right.
we say that it's okay to do that. Just because if some people are netting and some people are not, then it's going to be a difference. And we just need to make sure that, yeah, no capture for this project is what I'm getting from.
Okay.
Okay.
Good to know. Thank you.
Yep. But that's a good way to learn them anyway, right?
Okay. Be back at 7:10?
7:0. What's that, Jill?
Be back at 7:10? That
Yes.
gives me 5 minutes?
Yep, that sounds great.
All right. I should.
It didn't look too bad, except
I was
thinking
trying
could
to.
my finger.
Man, oh man, I am happy to report that the wind has quit blowing and I can hear the Harris sparrows and the frogs. And I also saw that the nettles are prime for making nettle soup right now, you guys. Just so you know. That's my report from the state from Stanton County. And you're muted, Joe, just so you know.
Yeah, when you're in the forest, you don't notice the wind, but I can believe we're up where you're at that you notice it and such.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, yeah. So,
And I'm also in very windy area up here in Blair, so I'm
Yeah.
not going to have too many days that are less than 18-mile-an-hour winds.
I know.
you know, and I think when we talk about the protocol and the wind, yes, in the Midwest it can be hard, and you can go out when it's more than that. I mean, that's just kind of a number. I go out half the time
Guideline
just
Well,
because
the protocol is 15 miles per hour is the top, is the
15.
top. Yeah.
I know,
Or
but
or wait, what is it?
18, I think you said.
Yeah, it's
I
18.
wrote down 18 in my notes.
It's 18, yep.
But sometimes that's going to be hard with our weather in the Midwest.
Mm-hmm. But we got to stay within protocol. So all the samples are all of them
Same.
are all the same across. So that's why we got to stick with the protocol.
Yeah, because I live up on a hill and it could be windier less windy downhill. So I need to bring a little wind meter with me or something.
And if you kind of, I think when we get to that, we have a picture of, is it flags blowing or something? And you can kind of tell by that if it's about that. Because you're right, if you're up on the top of a hill versus in a valley, you don't feel it.
Mm-hmm. And like sometimes the morning will be less windy than in the afternoon too. So that you might be able to catch it then. And we'll be able to, I don't know if it's in this presentation, I can't remember, but during the field day, we'll be able to show, if you need to look, to look on your phone to
And
kind
we'll
of
let
gauge
Brett
that.
add on Thursday more. All right, we ready? Okay. Why is it not going to the next slide? There we go. There we go. Okay, the skippers are divided into two parts, the grass skippers and the spread wing skippers. The grass skippers are generally smaller than the spread wing skippers. They're browns to oranges. Many of them have dark markings. Some are very distinct, some are not. They look like an airplane. As the picture shows, they're kind of have the one wings are up and the others are down, kind of like an airplane. And usually they're low, quick, erratic. They're so easy to overlook. You have to train yourself kind of to see some of these butterflies. They do like nectar. To attract mate, a male grass skipper will flutter rapidly around a female and give some of its pheromones out from the stigmas, and it'll chase the females behind. I was watching two of them one time as the male just kept getting closer and closer to the female. It was kind of fun watching them. These are the main ones that are in this area. There are a lot of other ones, but these are probably the ones that you will do. These are the ones with non-distinctive markings. We got Lee skippers, Leonard skippers, Delaware skippers, Tawny Edge, Dunn skippers, common roadside skippers. And then we have those with distinct markings. You look from this page to the other, you see the markings a whole lot easier. Peck skipper, Sachem skipper, Fiery skipper, Hopomock skipper, and Zebulon skippers. So we'll compare the light colored, non-descript, skippers first. Least, excuse me, least skipper is, the smallest skipper that we have, and it's really easy to identify because the wings are curved. It's the only one that really has the distinct curved wings, and then the body is out beyond the wings. And when you see it open, there's a very wide, dark band with the light color inside. It has low flight. It likes moist areas, so on a rainy year, you will there will be more of them than on a dry year, but they're very easy to identify. Leonard skipper is more of a prairie skipper. It's going to be found more in central Nebraska. It has the a reddish hind wing right here. It's more reddish brown. And then it has these white markings on them. And you can see the markings in white markings in the inside and outside. The ones here, kind of in the V shape, may be very pale that you don't notice them. So it's just going to vary. The Delaware skipper is almost a golden orange color. It's small, fast flight. It has this stigma. The stigma is a scent organ, and they're usually dark, and you can see it right here. If you look carefully, where they'll have that, but they're very, very non-distinct in their shape, or in the color. And then the ones that are darker is a dun skipper. Dun skipper looks like a piece of chocolate with a bronze head. This is often really quite bronze. They may have a couple of white dots. The females will have these white dots, and you might get this fringe, but what you're really looking for is it's so dark with not very distinct markings on it. As opposed to the other one that's the darker, the other two is a common roadside skipper. The common roadside skipper is very checkered on the hind wings, and unless it's an older adult and the scales have worn off, this checkered part is pretty distinct. And then it looks kind of like a tornado here, this white markings, and in the inside you'll see some white markings. The common roadside skipper is not particularly common around here. We see probably more dun skipper than common roadside skippers at Lawrenson. In the forest, I see very little of either of them. They're really more prevalent at Lawrence and Garden, so they like it more open area. The tawny edge is, it's still kind of dark in comparison to the other ones. It's kind of a brownish, orangish in color. You look for this, if you could see it, if they sit still long enough, this orange edge to the wing. Almost kind of nondescript, and it's a little bit bigger than the other ones that are light. Here's a dark stigma that if you couldn't see it on the other one, that you can see it's very dark on this one, and you can see this tawny fringe along it, so that will differentiate it from it. So those are the plain nondescript skippers. Then we get to the very with markings. Peck skipper it can be really common. They come up, they appear about the middle of the summer, and they got these staircase yellow markings that is very distinct on them. And the rest of it's kind of golden, and this is more yellow. Then you can get the circles on the inside that can help you differentiate it. A lot of times with these three, it's much easier to identify them if you can look at them from the outside. They don't always oblige you. but it does help the outside. Sachem is a little bit lighter in color. It has this V, the female has this V shape that is light in color. The males is, sometimes you may not even notice this V shape on the male, as opposed to the female. And it's pretty common. It's pretty good size in comparison to the other one. And so if you go to the tawny edge, you'll see that it goes up to 1.4 inches and this one goes to 1.6. Of the marks of these small skippers, the Sachem is probably our biggest one. The fiery skipper is also a stray. All three of these are strays, actually. And they have spots on the outside wing. And in the inside, you got these, we call them flames that point inside. You can see them right here. These three could be really common. They love flowers. So you're going to see them more in open areas where there's a lot of flowers. I don't see very many of them in the forest. They want the flowers and more open area. Then the other two, both of these are not very common. Probably I see more at Fontenelle than I do at Lawrenson. What's been kind of interesting, these are both at risk, and the last couple years we've started to see more of them for some reason, and I can't tell you why. The Hobomar, it's a dark color, and then with this, the yellow staircase on the outside of it, which differentiates it from the peck skipper, because this is much darker. And then you see this wide band on the ventral when it's open. Zebulon, it's yellowish color here with dots in it. It's not near as dark as Hobomok. The female is kind of a frosted brown color. It looks nothing like this male. They look nothing alike. Okay. Spread wings.
Spread wing skippers. They're named that for the fact that they keep their wings open most of the time, and their wings are pretty spread out. You won't have to worry too much about either the hind wing covering markings on the forewing or vice versa, depending on which side of the butterfly you're looking at. They're generally dark and dull colored, but they do have different types of markings. And like I said, they keep their wings open while they feed, rest, perch. The males are territorial, so they often perch on overhanging branches and tree trunks and wait for the females to come by, or perch for sun. Now their food source is dung, carrion, and rotting fruit. So you'll be able to, they don't need to be around flowers. Comparison. Our largest spread wing in this area is our silver spotted skipper. If the wings are open and you're looking at the dorsal side, there won't be a lot of markings to see. If it's just come out of the chrysalis, there'll be the orange stripes that will be really brilliant and be beautiful. But if you go to the ventral side, when their wings are closed, you're going to see this patch of white that where they get their name. When the sun hits it, it looks kind of silvery. That is real easy to tell when they're flying. And they have this kind of a bouncy fly pattern, or they're darting really fast. I mean, they'll just go by and you'll go, what was that? Moving to the wild indigo dusky wing, It is one of our at-risks, but it is found is pretty common in Lawrenceton because Lawrenceton has a host plant that it has actually adapted to, and that's crown vetch. You see that it's brown butterfly, and it can be variations of that color brown, and also the patterns can vary. But you'll see characteristically kind of triangular markings on the forewing and dots on the hind wing. And then also when it's closed, you're going to see some white marks. But other than that, just kind of a solid color. Hayhurst scallop wing is a browner one that doesn't have quite as much pattern to it, but you still see a pattern of different shades of the brown, and you're going to see some white spots, and it's a low flyer.
It is found more in central Nebraska than eastern Nebraska. It likes open prairies.
The common checkered skipper is one of my favorite butterflies. The background color can be a different shade of gray or brown, kind of a brown gray, or a dark charcoal. And some of that depends on the season and whether it's a male or a female. And then it's like they put this white lace pattern down on top of it. And it's very pretty. And they also can vary in their patterns, but it's pretty unmistakable. And you also, all your skippers have big heads and big eyes. So that's something else to look at to kind of generalize it into a group. The common sooty wing is very dark and has black mostly when you see it. And then it has the white spots on its forewing and the 4 white spots on its head. I'm always looking for those if it stands still long enough. And it has low erratic flight.
Okay, any questions on the skippers before we go on to the swallowtails? Is there anybody that?
Let's see here in the chat. The stigma is, can you tell us about the stigma, Joe?
The stigma is a dark structure on the inside where the pheromones are released from.
And not all of this.
Yeah, not all of them will have them. Just, we kind of mentioned the ones that have them. But they're in the inside, and some are much more prevalent than others.
Also, when you say stray, what are you referring to?
Okay, a stray butterfly is one that cannot winter over because of our weather. It gets too cold for them and they'll be killed. And so they come up from the south. It could just be from Missouri or Kansas or Oklahoma, but they're coming up usually from the south. And we don't necessarily see them every year, but some will be here almost every year. That's what a stray is.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay. You're good, swallow. That's right.
The swallowtails, probably one of the easiest of our butterflies to recognize. There's just a few little things here and there to know about them. They're usually bold, big, sometimes almost 6 inches across. Think of those 2 cards being end to end as to how big they are from one wingtip to the other. They can have sexual dimorphism in some of the species. Sharp angled forewings with long tails. Swift and powerful flight, and they usually fly up high. So if you want to see your swallowtails, every once in a while, look up. And a lot of times, if you're going to the same place each week, you can they'll actually be there from week to week, and you can look for them in that same place. They flutter their wings while they're feeding, and that helps to pollinate. It's kind of an accidental pollinating, but they get pollen all over their wings, and then they go to the next flower, and then while they're nectaring, they flutter their wings again. And the males often are observed puddling. So swallowtail comparison. So first, we'll talk about the eastern tiger swallowtail. Yellow with black stripes and black band. And over next to the tail, you can see a little bit of red and blue sometimes, but not always. If you look down below, the females can be black or they can be the same coloration as the males. And when you look at the female, you can almost see through their wings if they're in the sun. And it's kind of a really interesting, and you can definitely know then that that's the female tiger swallowtail. And you can see there's color on the female.
That they, as you go south, the black form of it becomes more prevalent. Up here, no, we're probably about half and half.
The black swallowtail is not quite. It can be a big, it's a big butterfly, but it's not always as big as the eastern swallowtail. Easy to identify because it has the 2 rows of yellow. And it will, if you get close enough, you can see some blue spots and really tiny red ones. When the wings are closed, you can see a band of kind of orange-red, and again, the double row of spots. Giant swallowtail is one of my favorite. It is beautiful. The dorsal side is black with yellow markings, and the markings actually cross. So you'll have the V and then like a cross up on the widest part of the butterfly. Ventral side is yellow with black marks, but they're unmistakable with that cross.
The giant swallow of these ones is the least common. Black swallowtail and tiger swallowtail are pretty common. The giant one, we see them every year, but maybe only 4 in a year.
If even that.
If even that. Yeah.
But the giant swallowtails are ones that really are high flyers. You'll see them at Fontenelle just coming right through the treetops. It is so cool. Then the 2-tailed swallowtail also is similar to the coloration of our eastern tiger, but it has more blue dots, and of course it has 2 tails on each hind wing, making 4. And also, if you get close enough, the abdomen is yellow.
It is more of a central Nebraska butterfly.
And the zebra swallowtail is another beautiful one, and it has an extra long tail, which sometimes birds get, but black and white, very, very different than the other ones, and the ventral side has a red stripe.
Okay, the brushfoots. They're small to large. They're very, very diverse group. They're called brushfoots because, okay, all insects have 6 legs. Their 2 front legs are more designed for balance or kind of holding them in place. And so often you only see like 4 legs instead of 6. They're divided into, we're going to look at 8 different groups: fritillaries, checker spots and crescents, angle wings, ladies and admirals, monarchs and viceroys, satyrs and wood nymph, emperors and unique. So the thing of it is, once you get, each group has its own characteristics, so it really isn't that hard, even though it's like, oh, there's 8 groups, and they become fairly easy just because of their shapes and their coloration. Fritillaries is the first group that we'll look at, and they can be kind of medium to large. They all have this brownish color with black markings. They're actually quite gorgeous butterflies. They have quick, erratic flights. Some of them are close to the grounds. The variegated is closer to the ground than, say, the great spangled. They are love nectar. You're going to find them on plants of most of the time. And most males perform elaborate courtship flights to attract the females. So we got 4 of them that we'll talk about. There are a lot more fritillaries in this state, but not that common that we were including them. The regal fritillary is the one that is the most endangered, and of course we have the separate survey for the regal fritillaries and monarchs. They are found in prairies, and so you're not going to find them very much, say, Fontenelle Forest, Lawrence, in this eastern part, unless we get, you're more in a prairie. It's a larger butterfly, strong flight. I remember the first time I saw it, and Holly and I were chasing it and chasing it and trying to get it so it would stop flying so I could get a picture of it, and which I don't know if that ever happened. But they got these white spots on the dorsal, very distinct, and then white spots on the ventral. The great spangled fritillary likes the forest. It's a pretty good size. The identifying characteristics are the silver spots on the underneath side, and then you have the heavy lines and such here. The middle part is pretty much open as compared to some of the other ones. You see quite a few every year, particular if it's been a wet year and there's a lot of Joe Pye weed and some of the milkweed and such that they like to be around. Silver bordered fritillary is a central Nebraska one. You'll notice that the inside of it is much more heavily marked than say the great spangled fritillary. It has this row of black spots down here. I have not seen one, but it's fairly common, say, in the central part. Variegated fritillary is a stray. The underneath side is more molted. You'll notice it's not marked like the other 3 with the whitish silver spots. And that really separates it from them if you're not sure what you have. And you get this beige color area line that you have. It's lighter in color almost, but a little bit more brown than what the other 2 have that are close here. All 3 of these you can see without too much problem, the great spangled being the largest of these 3.
The checker spots and the crescents. So if you shrink down the fritillaries, that's kind of what the crescents and the checker spots look like. However, they are different. If you look at the way their shapes of their wings, and the patterns are have less white and light colors, and they're more just the black, the dark, and the orange. The pearl crescent, the low flyer, the gorgon also. They are quick flyers. They like nectar. You find them on flowers. And the male pearl crescent is a territorial butterfly and will chase away other butterflies.
Oh, that'd be good. Yeah.
The gorgon checker spot, I look at the pearl and then I look at the gorgon. I see a lot more white dots on the gorgon, and that's usually my first telltale sign. And even though the pearl has some white edging, it's much more prominent on the gorgon. if you happen to see the underside of the gorgon, it's actually, quite an erratic pattern, V shapes of, and different than your pearl crescent, which is very light colored in the hind wing and a little darker on the forewing, but not quite so patterned. And then there's a little crescent mark in the kind of in the middle of the edge of the hind wing, ventral side. So that is a telltale sign. And then the silvery, the silvery checker spot, also small and also looks a lot like the gorgon and the pearl. However, there's small dark black dots on the hind wing and some crescent marks underneath. And then underneath, like the pearl crescent, it has a crescent in the middle of the edge of that lighter hind wing.
The pearl crescent is by far the most common of these three. Silvery checker spot is not very common at all. I think I've seen about 3 of them since 2015. So they're not very common. Depending on the, the year will depend on how many gorgons that you'll happen to see. Angle wings are a medium-sized butterfly. They're orange and black. Their edges to the wings are very broken up, as opposed to most butterflies have kind of smooth-edged wings. These are very broken up. They're strong flyers. They do not visit flowers very often. They're sap feeders or dung. If you have a tree that's been cut down in the early or late spring and summer and it's oozing sap, don't be surprised if you see these two there. They are 2 of the ones that overwinter. On a warm day in February, March, they'll come out. This March, we had some really warm days, and I was walking and I'd see quite a few of them, particularly the eastern comma. They're territorial. They like to fly down into the grasses to hide, and you often see them on the dirt and grasses. Okay, the difference between them. I still take pictures to know which one I have. The question mark, if you blow this area up, you'll see an extra line. You got this L, and then you got this line. That's what differentiates it from the comma, which just has the line, but not that extra one. Now, when they're flying or they're sitting and their wings are going up and down because they kind of keep moving them all the time, it's hard to tell them apart. On the ventral side, the question mark has a question mark on it. The comma has a comma. And so now the comma is more broken up than the question mark, and it also is a little bit smaller. And so that's one of the things you can look for. I probably see more commas than question marks, but this is one that if you can't differentiate which one you have, I wouldn't really worry too much. I still, as I say, take almost every time I see one, I take a picture to make sure I have the right name, because they're so easy to mix up.
Ladies and admirals. Painted lady is a butterfly that on some years is very, very common, and other years is not as common, but we always see them. And the American lady looks a lot like it, and we'll talk about how to differentiate. And then of course the red admiral. They're about, well, they're medium-sized butterflies. The pattern size is on the dorsal.
Probably can go to the next one.
And well, red admirals prefer bird droppings, rotting fruit, and tree sap. All right, comparison. The American lady, if you look in the center near the body, there's less pattern. And a lot of times it's not as dark. Whereas if you look at the painted lady, there is more pattern that goes in closer to the body, and it's a darker color near the body. But the easiest way to tell is to look on the ventral side for two large eye spots that the American lady has. In the painted lady, it's only 4 little ones in a row. So if they close their wings, you have an 8. If they don't, well, it might be a guess. Unless you can see them side by side, and then it's a little easier. The red admiral is easy to identify with the red band on all 4 wings. And when the wings are open, the red bands form a circle. It also has white spots on the tips of the forewings. And the underside looks very different than the dorsal side. And it's kind of similar to the painted lady. It's got a blue mark and also a coral mark on the forewing on the ventral side. And if that hind wing, which is very kind of unremarkable in its pattern, if the butterfly has that pulled up, it can cover the red spot and maybe even a little bit of the blue.
The red admiral, I saw 2 of them today, so they are here. They do migrate from the southwest. There's question if they winter over here, but good. The American lady does winter over, and you might see them now. You don't see near many of them as painted ladies, and they're often mistaken for each other. So.
And we have the painted lady compared to the American snoop. When it's flying, it's hard to tell them apart at first glance. However, if they stop, you just look for that long snoot. And also, if their wings are open on the dorsal side, you'll see that it's much darker with just some orange patches. And then once again, it has the same white dots on the wingtips. The wings are a little bit more cut up than they are on the painted lady.
The snoot is a stray, and that doesn't appear here every year, so it just kind of varies if you'll see it. Okay, monarchs and viceroys. Of course, monarchs is the poster child that, yes, we're worried about it, the migration and such, but the monarch has been helping increase the study of all butterflies. And so this has become important because butterflies are declining by 22% over the last 20 years. And it's kind of our poster child. So there you can see the difference. The viceroys are different, are smaller than the other one. Well, we'll go to you can see the comparison here. The viceroys have this line where the monarchs do not. The monarchs are higher gliders, and where the viceroys flap and are lower, and the size is quite a bit different. Viceroys like it where it's moist. So they're often by marshes, where monarchs you'll find in the forest, and you'll find in trees and by the marsh area. Wherever there's flowers, they'll be. And so here you can see the line again on the viceroy, not on the monarch, and the underside of both of them are lighter than the dorsal side. And then to compare them to the painted ladies, when a couple years ago, when there were so many painted ladies, I kept hearing people say, oh, the monarchs have really had a comeback. They're all over. Well, they're kind of the same color. but painted ladies are smaller. They're more marked, but when you first see them and the flying, you might mistake them. So I wanted just to have a picture side by side so you could see, no, they really don't look like each other, but except for the same coloring.
The nymph and the satyr are woodland butterflies. You're not likely to see them in an area like Lawrenson. It's going to be more in the woods, and they rarely visit flowers. They feed on rotting fruit, dung, and tree sap. They usually perch with their wings closed, and they all three have prominent eye spots. To compare them, the Littlewood satyr has four total eye spots, and then if you jump to the northern pearly eye, it has a lot more, and they're closer together. And then last, the common wood nymph has the eye spots. It can be covered up by the hind wing, and it has very two prominent ones on their forewings that are in patches of yellow when you see the butterfly open. If you look at the ventral side, the Littlewood satyr has almost the same eye spots, a little bit lighter in color. Northern pearly eye, you look at the dorsal side of that one in this picture, it doesn't have as much pattern to it, but it still has the multiple eye spots. And then, of course, the common wood nymph opened up to see the yellow patches.
Common wood nymph, that's not very common around here. I've seen more in prairie areas. They don't like to land with their wings open. It's really hard to get a picture with their wings open. And the northern pearly eye is much more common than the Littlewood satyr. And the Littlewood satyr only comes out for about 3 weeks starting June 21st. Comes out for summer. Emperors, there are two of them, the hackberry emperor and the tawny emperor. They're medium sized. Both of them, their host plants are the hackberry trees, and they feed on hackberry leaves. They like to land on people because they like your sweat. And they also like to land on wood, and they almost always are face down when they land on the wood. You can see this white bunch there, they're brown with white chips. There, I was looking for my, and then the white at the apex of it. The tawny emperor is not very common. It kind of depends on the air. It's more orange in color. The underneath doesn't have as much marking. It has these two, or not two, but this row of lighter markings to it. You'll see, it depends on the year again, if you're going to see very many tawny emperors. They're just not real common.
The unique butterflies in the brushfoot family. There are 4 of them, and they each have their own unique characteristic that defines it as that's what they are. You've got the snoot with the long nose, the broad yellow band of the morning cloak, the iridescent blue and no tails of the red spotted purple, and the large eye spots of the common buckeye. So in comparison, you just have to, you can see in the snoot, you can really see the long snoot, and that's just telltale, but it also has white dots on the tip of the forewings, and the underneath side really looks like a dead leaf. Morning cloak, as you can see, both ventral and dorsal show you the cream colored edge, and if you get close enough, you might be able to see the row of blue spots. Red spotted purple, definitely no tail, and that beautiful bands of iridescent blue. And they do have orange red spots again, if you happen to get close enough to see those. And the ventral side has a much more prominent row of spots, red spots, orange, red spots. The common buckeye has your big, beautiful eye spots. And also, if it's a fresh one, you can see the orange stripes on the forewings on the dorsal side. You'll also see them on the ventral side. The eye spots on the hind wing aren't prominent, but the two on the forewings on the ventral side are just as prominent as when they have their wings open.
The snoot and the buckeye are strays. Snoot, it really varies how often we see it. The buckeye we'll see almost every year. The mourning cloak really likes it early in the season. It winters over. It's the third one that winters over. I was seeing quite a few of them in March. And you won't see them very often in the summer because they don't like the heat. And the red spotted purple, they like the lower leaves of hop trees and such. And they kind of go to the same area year after year. I stop and I'll look around to see if I'm going to find them at a couple places in the forest because I always see them there.
Red spotted purple, there's a close-up of the red dots. And if you compare it to the black swallowtail, it's easy to tell it apart with the double row of yellow spots. And then, well, this one doesn't have tails, but if a bird didn't get the tails, black swallowtail has tails.
But when you just see them flying, they both look black
Yep, they do.
until you get a closer look. Okay, that is the species that you are most likely to see. Doesn't mean you won't see some other ones. We have a website that another master naturalist created. It's nebraskalepardoctor.com. It gives you some other information. The nice thing about it, it will give you the scientific name, common name, occurrence, if it's common, rare, stray, and then the range, what part, is it in the northeast or southeast? And then when you click on like the silver spotted skipper, you'll go to it and it will give you a lot more information. And one of the nice things about it, it has a map of Nebraska and it tells you the counties that the butterflies have been seen in. And so wherever you decide that you're going to do your survey, you might want to go to this site and print out. You can then go to counties and print out the butterflies that are in that county. And so we'll talk more about that on Thursday night, but that's kind of a nice reference for us. Questions?
I kind of do. I was trying to look it up. On the eastern tiger swallowtail, the slide you had with the two-tailed swallowtail looked like the female eastern tiger swallowtail. I always had seen in guides that the female is got the blue. If she's yellow, has the blue. And so I haven't seen good picture in any of my guides, except for an old Peterson's guide. So I don't know.
You know, that's one of the things we're not going to worry about if it's male.
Okay. Because it's not as common, is it, the two-tail?
The two-tail is almost all central. We're not even going to probably, if
Okay.
you're going to do your survey in the eastern part, you won't even see the two-tailed.
Okay. Because, you know, I go back and look at pictures that kind of look like a two-tailed, but
Yeah.
I always just thought it was the female.
You're
Sure.
probably not gonna see it until you, and I can't tell you for sure, I'd have to go look at that site at the map of Nebraska. And
Yeah,
probably once you get west of Lincoln. So if you're gonna stay east of that, you're probably not gonna see it.
yeah. No, I'm way east.
Yeah, I know you
And-
are.
And you also, at least in the comparison, the abdomen is yellow in the two-tailed. If you, from what the picture,
Oh,
the abdomen was darker in the eastern tiger. But
okay.
I'm saying that from the pictures because I'm not familiar with the two-tailed at all.
This is one of the reasons that I take my camera every time I go out
Oh, yeah.
and
yeah.
try to get pictures, because then you can download them to your computer, get a nice big picture and get a better idea of what you have. Other questions?
There was a question earlier if the two-tailed was the largest butterfly in Nebraska.
No, the giant swallowtail is.
And then what lens do you use when you're taking photos?
I go, it's an Olympus, and I can,
Is it a point and shoot, Joe?
no,
Oh.
it's a nice regular camera. That's not my phone, because my old phone, I could never see anything with the sunlight on it. And so I use a camera, but my lens, it goes up to like 300. And then when I download it, I can really crop my pictures good too, to see them. You know, I'm not saying go out and buy a camera by any means. It's just the fact that a lot of times you can identify them after you, and we're going to talk about that on Thursday. So we'll kind of get into that more then. Other questions? Or did we put everybody to sleep?
No, it was really good.
Yeah, it's not you, it's just this time of day I'm about done. It was good though.
You're welcome, Megan. Sandra asks, are we to choose a location to observe that has special characteristics? And we'll talk about survey site selection tomorrow. Are we going to get into that? We'll get into that a little bit more tomorrow.
Yeah, and then when we do the field day, we'll even get into it more.
I
What
think in general, we can say no, Sandra, right?
I want you to do is pick a site relatively close and that is convenient to you. I don't want you to drive an hour, 2 hours to a site unless that's what you want to do every week. You know, maybe you got a cabin somewhere on one of the lakes or somewhere and you go there every week. Okay, then you can do that.
So, Jill, what do you have to say to folks that are feeling a little like, what if my butterfly ID isn't very good? You know, what if I'm misidentifying butterflies? Like, what do you have to say to that?
You're going to misidentify some, and it's a learning process, and I wouldn't worry about it. You know, you're going to do the best that you can do, and you're going to find that as you keep going out all the time, that you get better and better at it. The other thing that helps that I have done is I've gone through the guidebooks a whole lot. And I look at them, and I'm at the point where I can go, say, to Arizona, and I can't tell you the species, but I can tell you the family that it's in.
Yeah, and that's like, it's just like with birds, right? Like if you know
Right.
what sparrows generally look like, if you know what finches, so getting in the first step, right, maybe would be getting familiar with the basic shape and characteristic of the family group. And then you can go with, what do you say about that, Joe?
I would say that that's exactly right. And what's nice for you, okay, if you get a guidebook, you're talking about 500, 600 butterflies in a guidebook. You have about, I guess I haven't counted them. You don't have more than 60 that you really have to know. Yes, there's going to be some strays that you'll come across. You take pictures and like we were out one time and we saw the white hair streak. Never seen it before, had no idea what it was. Took pictures of it, then put it on the screen, we knew it was a hair streak. So then I had to look at the books and narrow it down. And then if you're getting overwhelmed and you say, well, send me pictures. Send us pictures so that we can help you identify. And we're going to do iNaturalist. And don't feel bad if you can't name them. You know, it's all a learning process.
Yeah, there's butterflies now that we have to look it up, and we can't necessarily name them all.
Our community science specialist, Bree, is on, and she, when in doubt, take a photo, and then you put those photos. We have an iNaturalist project, and we'll talk about it tomorrow, where you can put those photos in the iNaturalist, and when you're uploading your data, then we can go to it to identify those photos as well. So we'll talk about that more. Is there a Nebraska guidebook, Joe?
No. Well, okay, we have the Eastern butterflies that Holly and I did that you can download from the Master Naturalist website. They will get all the species we just talked about that at the very beginning, when I showed the one slide, you will get that when we do the field day that has all those common ones with more explanation and pictures. But as for just the field guide of Nebraska, of all Nebraska, there is not one. But you're going to get us the closest thing to a field guide for Eastern and Central Nebraska.
We have big dreams for that.
Yeah,
So
we
you know. we have a whole folder. We have a folder. We have a document tab for it. So your Eastern butterfly one, Joe, we're gonna make sure they get to.
Yeah.
The link.
Yep.
Let's see. I really think that the comparison slides, and we're going to print those off for you too. Like once you get familiar with the families, then you can just flip straight to those comparison slides. I don't know. I just think that's just really, it's just super brilliant to have that. Oh, hey, Kate and Robert Brooks say that Steve Spoomer is going to be releasing a book in a year or so on butterflies of Nebraska.
Who is?
Steve Spoomer.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh, that'll be cool.
And then Paige Bachman says that Shram has a Butterflies of the Great Plains with a quick reference, a guide that is laminated and pretty easy to carry.
Yeah.
And she said she just checked it, and a lot of the species we talked about are on it. That's great feedback. Thanks for that. I interrupted you, Joe. What were you saying?
No, I was, there are some, the Great Plains ones, there's some that have it narrowed down. So you don't have as many. One of the field guides that we use is the butterflies of the Kansas City area, because it's really close to the, what we have. They got a few that we don't have, and we got some that they don't have. But on the field day, I'll bring some of those guides so people can look at them.
Okay, that's looking, we'll call that a wrap. We will see you all tomorrow, Thursday at 6 p.m. and we will go over the updated survey protocol. It's going to be, we're real excited about it. Jill, that was really exciting. Thank you so much. And you too, Holly. It was great to have you hear so much about you. It was great to have you on today for sure. Everyone, lots of thanks and love to you, Joe. We do have one question here about the crane trust count as a field day. Paula, we'll get back to you on that, okay? We have a question about that, and we have a meeting with the team, and we'll ask about that. Oh, people are excited, so excited. Hope everyone has a good night. That's so great. Thanks for coming in, Mark. Everybody's so excited, Joe. You guys, ladies.
Can't wait. It will help you pick sites and see what you can come up with. More you get out, the more you will recognize them.
Yep, yep, yep. You're building a relationship with these creatures. You're going outside and you're building a relationship with the outside.
Yep.
That's what it's all about. Very good. Okay, I'm gonna shut everything down. Does that sound good, folks?
All right. We will see you on Thursday.
Yeah. Have a good night, everybody.
All right.
Yep.